All right, welcome back to SportsLine, everybody. John Burton with you. Happy to have you with us. Be safe out there if you're traveling. It's going to be a nasty night tonight. Ron Howes and Charlie Nace will have the latest updates for you weather-wise, what to expect for the overnight hours and into tomorrow later on News Channel 5, over on News Channel 5, starting at 10 o'clock. Update from college basketball. Vanderbilt with an early 11-9 lead over Mississippi State on senior night at Memorial Gym. And earlier tonight, as we told you, Tennessee wins at LSU, snapping their losing streak 78-63. Highlights of those games coming up for you tonight on News Channel 5 Sports at around 10:22. Speaking of losing streaks, our Nashville Predators, all of a sudden, they're in the midst of a 4-game losing streak. We bring in our buddy Thomas Willis from NashvillePredators.com to talk about it. Thomas, is it time to press the panic button, or do we need to jump into the Cumberland River? You know, we waited forever for the Predators to just get a 2-game losing streak. Now it's up to 4. What have you seen from this team the last few games?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer is it's just kind of one of those points in the season when maybe the good fortunes had gone a little too long. You know, like you mentioned, we knew this was coming eventually, and I think in the long term it's just going to be honestly a pretty short hiccup that in the long run might help them into the playoffs or preparing them for a little adversity that they really hadn't faced at other parts of the season.
Obviously, it's a tough road trip. You know, facing 3 tough or facing a bunch of Eastern Conference teams that are at or near the top in the conference. One of the flags, I guess, that have gone up is the fact that there's been a little bit of a scoring drought of late. And, you know, we've come to expect under Peter Laviolette's system that there's always going to be scoring chances and probably goals coming off those scoring chances. Do you see those same chances developing, just the puck's not going in the net?
Yeah, I think the main problem has been the slow starts. The last 9 games, the Preds have given up the first goal in 9 straight games. And so because of that, like you're talking about, it's hard to find that offense. It's hard to play your normal game when you're instantly trailing. And then because of that, you're taking risk on the defensive end, and you're having to almost switch up, not your entire system, but the different plays that you're running in both zones to try and play catch-up. And so, yeah, because of that, it's putting some strain on some of these scores. And you haven't gotten goals recently out of guys like James Neal. Even Mike Ribeiro hasn't contributed as much at the highest rate that he was earlier in the season. So, like you mentioned, the last 2 games on this road trip were tough, and it's because of the slow starts. Like I said, once you find yourself behind the 8 ball so fast, it's difficult to play the type of game that you want to and that you know that you can. A lot of the guys have said, you know, the third period's our period. It's been that way all season long. It's not working because they're not to the point leading up to that third period like they have been in the past. They haven't been trailing as much as they have been recently going into that final 20 minutes.
Thomas Willis from NashvillePredators.com is joining us here on SportsLine. You mentioned that 9 straight games giving up the first goal or getting off to those slow starts. Have the players talked about figuring out a way to put their finger on as to why these slow starts keep happening?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult answer because they say the right things going into it. Like you mentioned, you know, they've been responding throughout the season. We waited so long before they even hit that 2-game losing streak. It was like, you know, we can do this. On the confidence that you want to have in that we lose a game, but then the very next time we're jumping right back up and we're getting that production. And I don't know if they have a great answer for it. I think one easy thing that you could point to is the amount of fatigue. In February, tied with the Florida Panthers, the Preds played the most games over that stretch. So they were consistently playing the 3 games in 4 nights. And when you have that kind of schedule, it does get difficult to jump right out of the start, right out of the gate when you begin a game consistently. And so I think you could definitely point to that being one of the reasons why right after the opening faceoff that they haven't had the production of the starts like they've wanted.
Yeah, good old-fashioned fatigue maybe setting in. You mentioned James Neal. He started off this season like a house of fire. Looked like it was going to be the NHL trade of the year. His production, as you said, has fallen off a little bit. Any particular reason why we haven't seen more, I guess, production from an offensive end from Nealer?
Yeah, I think one easy thing to point to is there still hasn't been that set or those locked-in forward lines since the recent forward trade. And now Neal was kind of heated up when he was on the second line back with Mike Fisher and Colin Wilson. Those 3 guys as a unit were really clicking 2 or 3 weeks ago. But recently, trying to get, as you mentioned earlier, that offense going. Neal's now gone back up into the first line with Rivero, which definitely worked the first 30-plus games of the season, but they're kind of trying to find that chemistry again. Hockey's one of those things where it's easy to say, do these guys have chemistry, or is that the issue? And it seems a little simple at times, but honestly, even small changes like that can kind of throw you off and just take you some time to get used to it. So I think that's maybe one of the main reasons is he's just trying to find that consistency. Laviolette's gone back to that first line that he was running out, like I said, the first 30, 40 games of the season of Forsberg, Rivero, and Neal. So it's worked in the past. It's just they've only been back together these last 3 games. So they're kind of trying to find that groove again and get the offense going.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Thomas, because Laviolette definitely strikes me as a guy that he isn't afraid to tinker with the lines and try to find those right combinations. And he can be pretty bold about, how he mixes things up a little bit, can he?
Oh, for sure. I think one of the telling moments of that was about a month ago when the Preds were in the midst of a 6-game winning streak. He switched up the forward lines, and it kind of was like a lot of us were asking, hey, what's the deal? If it isn't broken, don't fix it, that kind of old mantra. And he's like, no, I could tell that there was kind of some signs of we weren't pushing the offense, we weren't getting the game that we wanted. So he totally mixed up, especially the top 9. But, yeah, so recently he's been tinkering a little bit more because there's an understanding there from Laviolette that you really have to have those first 3 lines going, because when you get down the stretch run and when you get into the playoffs, another team's defense almost certainly can shut down your entire first line. So you've got to have that secondary scoring. And so he's trying to find that balance with, like I mentioned earlier, Mike Santorelli, adding him in, so trying to get him going on the third line, trying to figure out where a guy like Wilson should end up. So, yeah, I mean, he's kind of have the confidence to try some different things just to ultimately get that production that he knows he's going to need down the stretch run.
Thomas Willis, our guest from NashvillePredators.com. Let's dive into that a little bit more. Steve Lehman and I were having a good conversation a couple weeks ago about how far the Predators can go into the playoffs, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. A lot can happen between now and the start of the postseason, but obviously, as you said, as you get further in the playoffs, you're going to be facing teams that are going to come at you sometimes, certainly their top 2 lines are going to be outstanding. Usually their third line is very good. Sometimes they can roll 4 lines at you. Do you feel, as constructed right now, that this Predators team, this group of forwards, has what it takes to compete with the Chicagos, the LAs, the Anaheims, etc., as we get further along in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think the best thing that you could point to when it comes to just the forward groups matching up is what was really working well early in the season, and I mean even up during this last little losing stretch, and that's the ability of Laviolette to match up his fourth line, which is normally Paul Gaustad, Gabriel Bork, and Eric Nystrom, to match those 3 guys up against an opponent's top line. So you said with the Blackhawks, Jonathan Taves, or talking about the Kings and Andrei Kopitar. So kind of locking them down, and that allows a guy like a Mike Ribeiro, who maybe doesn't have the size or the defensive prowess that other top-line centers does. It allows him to go up maybe an easier matchup because he's not having to go run and gun with another first-line opponent. So he's able to take almost some sheltered minutes, if you will, and then that allows him, to create that offense like he can for guys like Neal and Forsberg to put the puck in the back of the net. But, yeah, I don't think there's any question that a lot of critics would say, hey, the forward group is maybe, if I had to choose, one of the 3 between forward, defense, and goaltending, that's the weaker of the 3. But at the same time, there's no question that the Preds have arguably the best defense and, as we've seen, the best goalie in Pekka Rinne. So it's kind of like if you've got 2 out of the 3, it's definitely one of the things that can give you an advantage, even in the playoffs against the toughest opponents.
No question about it. You mentioned Pekka Rinne. From where I sit, he's the MVP of the league. What say you?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. Yeah, it's been almost 10 years since a goalie won the Hart MVP award, but, he's had a year special enough that, hey, I don't care if it's been 10 years. I think he's ready to do something like that.
And also, I mean, when you look at, some other candidates for postseason awards, you think maybe this is the year for Shea Weber? It seemed like, for him to win that postseason hardware, he had to be on a winning team. And obviously the winning seems to have energized his game. Heck, he's even friendlier in the locker room talking to us in the media. I mean, a lot of pressure's on this guy, right? I mean, he's got a huge contract. He's the captain of the team. It's his job to set the tone for this hockey club. And I think he's stepped up and become even more of a leader this year. Now, the winning probably makes it a little bit easier, but I think this could be his year to get some postseason hardware as well.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's a long list, and I won't get into them here, but the Jack Adams for Coach of the Year for Laviolette. You can make an argument for GM of the Year with Poyle. Obviously, I think a lot of us feel pretty confident Philip Forsberg's chances for the Calder for Rookie of the Year, but you're right. So it would be his fourth nomination for the Norris Trophy for the best defenseman, and I agree with you. This year feels a little bit different. It's not just because of the winning as a team, but he's taken another level. I think he's really started to gel with his defensive partner, Roman Josi, and we've seen a little bit more even just confidence and willingness to say, hey, I know I'm one of the top defensemen in the league. And I think you saw that back in the All-Star game in January when he won the hardest shot competition, saying, we've moved on from a guy like a Zdeno Chara. We've even moved on from some of these more offensive defensemen like an Erik Karlsson who won the Norris over Weber in the past. We've gone to this all-around game, these statistics that say, hey, he's good in the back end, he's good in the offensive zone. Meanwhile, he's a captain, and he's on one of the best teams in the NHL. So you got to like his chances when you look at it that way.
We're wrapping things up with Thomas Willis from NashvillePredators.com, kind enough to join us to talk a little Preds hockey. You want to wrap things up with this, Thomas. Philip Forsberg, outstanding rookie season. The guy plays with such poise. What's been some of the keys to his success this year?
One of the things that Philip always points to when you ask him, what's different this year than last year, a year that he spent most of the time in the minor leagues, it's just that he didn't want to look at the other expectations or the things surrounding him that people might have for him. He simply just wanted to work hard, to understand that he was getting a brand new chance with a new coach, and then just be able to try and do his best and be able to play and listen and try to contribute on offense, and at the same time recognize that even as a forward, and this is one of the areas that people would have said was lacking in the past, even as a forward, he's got to have that defensive game, he's got to have that ability to back check. And honestly, I think one of the things that you've got to watch for Philip Forsberg, it's easy to see the moves and the goals, but one of the reasons why he's been so successful and why he is in the NHL this year is watch how he back checks, watch how he will even check opponents or poke check the puck away from him in the neutral zone. He's got that game in all three zones. And so because he worked on that over the summer and because of the way he's been able to click under Laviolette's new system, it's created a really special year for him. He's obviously set all our rookie records already this year, and I think there's only more to fall in the rest of his career and in the future.
All right, we've got the Islanders tomorrow. Obviously a big game for a number of reasons. Islanders are an outstanding hockey club. Preds back home. How important will it be to just get a solid win at home over a good team and kind of get the taste of that bad taste out of that 4-game losing streak out of their mouths?
Oh, yeah. Like you mentioned, there's no question that they're one of the top teams in the NHL. They're leading the Metropolitan Division. And along with Nashville, one of the surprising teams this season. Last year, Nashville didn't make the playoffs, but this year, they've just been able to jump quickly up to the top. So I think it would do two things. One, it's just snapping the skid and kind of getting the groove back at home. I think it was pretty shocking to see them lose 2 straight at home after they've lost just a handful all year long. So A, it's going to do that, but then B as well, it's going to kind of be a little bit of a revenge game, if you will. They lost to the Islanders just a couple weeks ago up on Long Island in what was kind of ticketed as a big game because it was almost a 1-2 matchup then. So it almost would be saying, hey, we're closing the chapter on this streak or this sort of rough patch over these last 10 games that started back up in New York and, ready to move on with that kind of victory.
All right, should be a great game tomorrow. Thomas Willis from NashvillePredators.com. Follow him on Twitter at Tom A. Willis. Thomas, I really appreciate you jumping on. I enjoyed it. Let's have you on again real soon.
Oh, let's do it. Happy to.
All right, thanks a lot. Have a great night and stay warm and dry out there. It's going to be a nasty night. All right, thanks to Thomas Willis for joining us, talking a little Preds hockey. When we come back, a special treat, an encore of my one-on-one interview with WWE Hall of Famer, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. That's next, and your phone calls right here on SportsLine. Stay with us.